Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. This morning we have a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Mark Perna. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing great, Jeremy. It's an honor to be with both of you.
Hey, Mark, it is a pleasure to have you today. I'm excited. I followed you for a while, and so I'm looking forward to you sharing some of your expertise and experience with us today.
I'm looking forward to it. So you guys are on. Let's rock.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's go. So let's start off by just hearing a little bit about your background. Tell us about your journey.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. I'm very fortunate. What I get to do every day is to try to impact young people. Most people think young people are all these negative terms associated with them. I go the other way. I think young people today in America are the most extraordinary generations to come down the pike. I think they're the most intelligent, resourceful, kind of pit bull-like generations we've ever seen in this country. When they see something they want, they'll move heaven and earth to get to that want to. Our challenge, of course, as parents, educators, and employers is getting them to want something. That's kind of where the battlefield of the future is. So my journey has taken me through, becoming a generational expert, but also education, workforce development, economic development, and so that we can best connect the pipelines between education, employment, and economic development for the viability of all of our communities. And so I spend a lot of time speaking to educators and educational leadership, but I spend a lot of time speaking to chambers of commerce, economic development, community leaders, and employers too, on how we kind of connect all of these dots at all levels of education and experience. So it's taken quite a road to get to that point, and I've been doing this for quite some time. I started this company 27 years ago, and have gotten it to this point.
Oh, wow, that's impressive. Well, you don't look that old, so that's a little bit of a shock.
Well, thank you very much, Brad. I appreciate that. I'm going to take that one all the way to the bank.
Yeah, that was kind of, I'm like 27 years. Wow, yeah, that's awesome. But yeah,
I am 62 years old and proud of it.
Oh yeah, you don't look it. So that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, no way.
Wow. So you really do fit a niche. We've kind of talked about before that a lot of times it seems like there's a disjoint between school and college and the workforce. So how do you help, like you said, the pipeline? How do you fuse that or
Well, I think it's understand. It's a great question, Brad. I mean, it's really understanding that everything has to be on the table to young people today because the world's completely changed. We're in a different set of circumstances today than we were a year ago, not to mention longer than that. The world is continuing to shift, and young people's view of where the world is and what's possible for themselves comes through our educational system. But what's happening is we have to have everything on the table, right? I'm a tremendous fan of a 4-year degree and beyond, but I'm a tremendous fan of 2-year community and technical colleges. I'm a tremendous fan of certifications, licensures, apprenticeship, the military, entrepreneurship. So I think everything has to be on the table for a young person today because 2/3 of young people today in America do not see necessarily themselves going to college. And when you look at all of the numbers and everything that I share across the nation, you really recognize that young people are in a different place than they were a short time ago. We all think they're standing over here, but when in fact they're standing over here, and we have to adapt accordingly to where they are. Everything they need, the human connection, the ability to understand how any of this is relevant and purposeful in their life. So the more we can build that relevance and purpose to them building something meaningful in their life, what I like to refer to as a personal competitive advantage, the more they're building the nuggets and the things that are necessary for them to be able to kind of take that next step and that next step, at any level of education experience, but they're doing it with purpose. They're doing it with passion. They're doing it and investing wisely so that they get the outcome that they're going for. And that's based on each individual's unique interests, talents, and abilities. And so, what I try to connect the dots with, around the nation, is how do we do this and have these conversations right down to the tactical level in a classroom? We have to empower our educators who are doing extraordinary work at the tactical level, no matter what they teach and no matter what level of education they're in. But how do we empower them with the kind of the nuggets, the strategies, and the perspective to know, here's where the world's changed, here's how I adapt accordingly, but here's how I win the hearts and minds of the young people in my sphere of influence. And I think when we do that, we empower teachers to truly help young people take that next big step in their life.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and especially in like a technology age, for the teachers to have that human connection with them that they really need. The other thing I struggle with, and I'm sure you see this too, is that I think one of the big problems in education, we're so focused on students' weaknesses and fixing their weaknesses, like standardized test scores to get them up to a certain level. We never get to what are their strengths, what are their passions, how do we develop those and help them find, what their passion is, what their purpose is in life. I think that, is kind of a disconnect even within the school system that we see.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Brad. And, one of the things I tell young people, because in my journeys, I get to speak to a lot of high school kids, I get to speak to middle school kids. And whenever I do, I tell young people, don't spend 1 minute trying to find your passion, because every meme on social media, right,
Yeah.
says find your passion, live your passion, be your passion, right? It all says this out there. And I tell young people, I said, don't spend a minute doing that. I said, because passion is different than interest. Passion is where grit and stick to itiveness and resilience lives. I don't think we trip over our passion. I think our passion finds us.
Finds us, yeah.
I said, take every minute you can. And instead of trying to find your passion, take every minute you can and find what you're good at. Try different things out. Try to see what you like. You may find that you're really good at something and you don't like it. That's an important piece of information. You may also find you really like it. And if you like it, you may do it. Find a way to job shadow it. Find a way to get on the team. Find a way to get involved in the activity. Find a way to go out and just kind of see if you like it enough to keep doing it. And I said, if you can find what you're good at, and there may be many things that you're good at, that gives you a tremendous opportunity to build a personal competitive advantage, meaning the robust academic knowledge you might need, the technical abilities that go with it, and even the professional skills, right? Work ethic, punctuality, leadership, communication, work-life balance, etc. All of those things that I call professional skills, it allows young people to see the relevance in taking each step. We have far too many young people today standing still because they either don't see something worth moving toward, or they're afraid to take a step, or there could be one or a myriad of things holding them back. And so to unleash their passion, purpose, performance means they've got to find something they want. And that starts with finding something they're good at, and then taking that and being able to move forward.
And, that's one of the points I made in my last book, is that, and it goes back to the weakness strength thing, is when we can find what students do well, their talents, their strengths, and when we allow them to utilize them, they experience success, and that success builds confidence to let them try new things, different things. And I'm with you. We need to let them try different things. So often, even like, the sports analogy is, oh, my child is baseball, they're only going to do baseball and be great at baseball. Well, they may be great at something else. They may, it may not. We try to put them on a track so early to one thing, and they really do need to experience different things, try different things. Like you said, they may hate them, they might like them, they might be good at them, they may not, but you don't know until you experience those things. And we don't really give them the opportunity to do that like we really should.
Well, and one of the things, Brad, that I've noticed kind of in my journey is, why do we assume in America that just because someone's good at school, they should get more school? I mean, we do that. We assume that someone with straight A's and a 4.2 weighted grade point average should be going on to the next level of education. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm a tremendous fan of the next level of education. If what the person wants to do in life requires that education, I think they need to invest wisely, go with passion, go with purpose, make sure they get it done. But that's not what's happening in America. Far too many young people today are dropping out for a myriad of reasons. And even those high academic performers are going off to a higher level of education. And according to Georgetown University Center for Education and Workforce, over 1/3 of them with SATs over 1,000 do not obtain a college degree, yet nearly all of them attempt college. And so what that says is the rules of relevance and purpose still exist for the high academic achiever as it does for anyone, which is if you're going to go to the next level, why are you going there? What do you hope to accomplish? And will it be connected ultimately to the things that you're good at? Just because you're good at school doesn't necessarily mean you need more school. You may want to start your own business. You may want to, work in heating and air conditioning. You may be more apt to do something else that one day maybe, you determine you want to do that for a while and then become an engineer in that field. And then you go off for a 4-year degree and beyond in something completely relevant. So it's helping young people kind of discern for themselves what's the right fit for them based on what they're good at. And then how do we help them take each step and wrap our services and our consult, and our mentorship so that they can take those steps with the greatest advantage they can.
I love it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I know that we've probably talked about it a little bit already, but can you give us maybe a couple of snippets from Answering Why, Unleashing Passions, Purpose, and Performance in Younger Generations? I know that our listeners would love to hear a little bit about your book.
Well, as far as, picking a snippet, maybe to even just kind of, drill down a little bit on just the points we've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
This impacted my own home, right? I've got two sons. They're 2 years apart. It's amazing to me you can dip into the same gene pool twice and come up with two totally different human beings. But I managed to pull that off. And my youngest son, Nick, in high school was not performing at a high level. Halfway through sophomore year of high school, he had a 1.5 grade point average. He missed the maximum number of days his freshman year, maximum number of days his sophomore year. I tell this story in the book. And, my son would wake up every day with a different ailment to avoid going to school. Back hurt, neck hurt, stomach hurt. He could throw up on cue. That was impressive. And he, if you were to ask my son, what are you passionate about? He'd say, I'm passionate about not going to school. So that's where he was until the day he walked into a programming and software development class to scope it out and just check it out for junior year. Came home. And I asked him while making dinner, I said, how'd it go today? He said, Dad, I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I shook my head because there's no scarier phrase you can hear from your son or daughter than I know what I want to do with the rest of my, because you realize whatever comes out of their mouth next is either something to applaud or something to start talking them out of. And so I said, all right, I'll bite. What's that? He said, I want to be a software engineer. Now, he went to a programming class, scoped it out, and came out wanting to be a software engineer. Somebody planted that seed in his head. And so I immediately asked him a few questions, right? I put my dad hat on. My parents all have that hat. Moms have a mom hat. Dads have a dad hat. But I started asking questions. One, what's a software engineer? He knew the answer. Second question, typical dad question, how much money can you make doing that? Third question, how do you do it? He said, well, first I'm going to have to graduate high school. And no joke, I was like, thank you, God, because the words graduate high school had never come out of his mouth before. And so, so what happened, right? 2 years later, he graduated high school with a 2.5 cumulative grade point average, went to take the ACT and scored a 32, got a small scholarship to Akron University where he completed a 4-year computer science degree in 4 years. A month before he graduated, he had 2 job offers from two international software firms, both at $50,000 apiece. Took one. Changed jobs several times, had several promotions along the way. Today, he makes north of $90,000 a year as a software engineering apprentice. So, and now he and his girlfriend take every dollar they make and travel to every Comic-Con they can get to anywhere in North America. So, he is living his version of what he wants to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's a powerful illustration. How many of us know someone who would have talked my son with a 1.5 grade point average and an attendance problem out of wanting to go to college? It was the perfect place for him to go once he knew why he was going.
Mm.
I can give you so many examples on the other side of people with 4.0 grade point averages who have no business getting a 4-year degree because they have no idea what they're doing
What they're
there.
doing.
They have no idea how it's going to connect to what they want to do in their life. So in middle schools, high schools, we need to really connect the dots for young people so that they understand where the avenues are that should be, all of them should be open to them, and then going and getting the education most relevant based on their own unique interests, talents, and abilities.
We were talking with a superintendent, I think he was from Washington last week, and he went to Switzerland, and they have just really refined an apprenticeship program. And so he brought it back to his school district. And so, these students are kind of figuring out, like you said, what they want to do. And in high school, they can go ahead and go into that field. And so they're earning credits towards college while they're still in high school, but getting paid to work at the apprentice shop. And he's like, we don't have to worry about, it's the things you talk about. We don't have to worry about motivation. We don't have to worry about attendance because they're coming, they're getting paid, they're doing something they really like. He said, a lot of the factors that schools have to deal with, we don't have to deal with them now because of that. So, I absolutely agree with you. Education for so long has been, let's track everybody to college. And, I guess it's great if everybody, we want everybody to have that opportunity or whatever. But, when you think of like the cost of college now, money that can be made in other fields, vocation, technical, that, is more than a lot of college degrees can make, we really do have to rethink what we are doing.
Absolutely, yes. And I think we have to build the relevance into, academic, disciplines, but also technical abilities. I'll give you a great example, and I talk about this around the nation, is, you take someone with a 4.6 weighted grade point average and a 1600 on their SAT who wants to go off to Harvard and become a surgeon one day, but they have the inability to cut somebody open. That's a problem. I mean, they're on this path. They think they want to be a surgeon, but they do not have the technical abilities to do it. So young people today have to recognize they have to marry their technical abilities and their academic knowledge. But we have to go a little further than that. Young people today, who are seeking to get straight A's and 4.0s and get into the best schools, they come with a natural view of a competitive advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
They show up
Right.
every day because they believe they were sold by their parents, by our culture, by the school. Like, hey, if I perform really well, I'm going to have greater opportunities. But the world has really changed in a way, and you do not have to be perfect to get what you want out of life. And I say this to audiences all the time, is that hands down, you can have a competitive advantage in your life with a 4.6 grade point average. But you could be wildly successful in America with a 3.7. You can be wildly successful in America with a 2.8. You can be wildly successful with a 2.4. So your grade point average is not directly indicative today as to how successful you will be in your life, because it has to revolve around three critical things: robust academic knowledge, technical competencies, and professional skills. So if you have work ethic, punctuality, leadership, communication, work-life balance, stress management, critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, networking, flexibility, I can go on, right? If you have those kinds of things that I call professional skills in America today, you will do extraordinarily well. Because I ask employers at every level across America, CEOs, owners, hiring managers, human resource executives, what are you looking for? Here's the answer I get hands down across America today. We need people who show up on time consistently and can pass a drug test. And if they can have a little bit of critical thinking and problem solving, we can hook them up. And so, yes, academics are important. Yes, technical is important. But if you have professional skills, you can make the rest of that work.
Yeah, I remember speaking with a Fortune 500 recruiter one time, and he said, I don't look to Harvard and, the big universities for people to hire. He's like, I want the people that had to work their way through night school and community college because of those things. Like I said, they have the work ethic, they have the drive, they have they're going to come do the work. They don't have an expectation that something should be given to them. They know that they're going to work for it. And they, like I said, they're going to show up, they're going to do the work, hopefully pass the drug test and, be able to work with others. But he said, that's what we look for. because they are the ones that make the best employees.
Struggle is a good thing. We think that the goal should be to not have failure and to be struggle free. And I'm here to tell you, I am more because of my failures in my life than I am my successes. And I talk about this very little in my first book. I'm working it into my second book, but I speak about it all over the nation. I have been bankrupt. I've been a single dad. I've gone years without making enough money to support the three of us. And I've weighed over 400 pounds in my life. And, those all happened when I was 34 years old. And I made a strategic change in my life that took me from the worst moments in my life to today, where I almost can't believe where I am as as an international thought leader, as someone who does 90 keynote speeches and write to 4.4 million readers at Forbes, and have a #1 best-selling book that won 8 national book awards. I had no idea in my life that kind of success was possible, until I shifted my thinking accordingly. And young people today do not recognize the power in failure. And I don't mean not trying and failing, and there's no power in that. But I'm talking about giving something everything you've got, failing, and then adapting accordingly. The power's in the adapting. The power is in, and we learn that as adults, sometimes even later on in life. But young people don't recognize that there's a power in failure. And if they recognize the power in failure, they become less afraid of it. And that being uncomfortable is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. My philosophy in life is to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And every day I put myself into positions that make me uncomfortable, but so that I can stretch myself to go beyond that. And if you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, you've prepared yourself for an extraordinary life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, a few moments ago, you presented a list of different professional skills. A lot of the work that Dr. Johnson and I do is aimed towards educational leaders. Out of those professional skills, what do you think are the most important ones for those in educational leadership?
Communication, empathy, absolutely. Number one
Mhm.
and two have to go hand in hand. Building a human connection is the only way in order to connect, engage, and answer why for the people that are in your sphere of influence. In a leadership position, meaning your staff, both classified and certified, and being able to create a vision necessary to understand what we're trying to accomplish, how we're going to accomplish that. But if you cannot communicate with empathy and with a human connection, and I'm finding that's where most things have gone off the rails in this post-pandemic
Mhm.
world, where the human connection was really destroyed to a large extent, to our staffs, but also for the students as well. And so what's happening is that we have less human connection. We're more screen oriented, and you can't build a really powerful human connection with a screen, but you can eye to eye and belly to belly. Brad's ability to be able to sit down and have lattes, during his peak management times, was an ability to build a tremendous human connection, and that changed everything, because you can understand where somebody's issues, challenges are, maybe where they're struggling, maybe where they're excelling, things that they're doing that can be best practices. And probably it's a lot of the stuff you end up writing about in your books, guys, right? I mean, it's the things you put out there are the ones that people are doing extraordinary things and the way they adapt to what's happening. And so I find when I speak around the nation to either leadership or even young people, is they're relieved to hear that I've struggled in my life. It gives them permission to feel okay that they're struggling or have
Mhm.
struggled in their life. And I
Mhm.
don't think we spend enough time kind of presenting that to young people. They have this view that they've got to be perfect in everything they do, and that's just not reasonable to think that way.
Mhm.
I
And
tell people around the nation, and that in high school I was in the half of the class that made the top half possible. And whereas that's that can be funny and humorous if you do the math on that pretty quickly, it's still a fact of life. It's absolutely the truth. But that helped me see where young people are today, and what kind of stalls them, in their journey is, we speak really well in education to those who are high academic achievers. We have that speech down pretty well.
Mhm.
We don't do a really good job of the people who aren't high academic achievers, but they're extraordinary. But we look at them that they're not living up to their potential. Who says they're not living up to their potential? They may be an extraordinary entrepreneur on the way. They may have incredible talents and abilities, but we're only valuing their academic pursuits and not the whole child, right? Not the technical abilities, the professional skills, the creativity, the ingenuity, the innovation, all of those things that could be there in droves, but our system just does not value it the same way it does how well you did on a test. And we have to shift that because we're disengaging far too many young people today who have absolutely bright futures ahead for them, but they're not connecting the dots because our system won't allow it.
Man, and that's a good word for the teachers that will listen and the leaders too. And, you're preaching to the choir with us too, because, I absolutely agree with you. Our measurement is how well they perform on a test. That's not real life. They may excel in other areas, things that we, even when you talk about some of the professional skills like, leadership and empathy, I mean, those are things we don't even test or really can't test that they may excel at. And, sometimes I'll make the comment, the A student will probably wind up working for the C student in the real world. And I know that's hard, for educators to kind of come to terms with, but that's the reality, because we limit what we measure as successful when all of these students that come have so many different talents, like you said, just waiting, to be used and to be developed so that they can be successful.
And Brad, here's where the world's changed. This is a significant pivot. 84% of Generation Z, these are the ones in our homes, classrooms, and place of business, 84% of them want to be their own boss. They want to own a company one day. And when you wrap your head around 84%, one of the things driving that is that in previous generations, young people viewed being an entrepreneur as risky. So they would go more towards corporate America and working for somebody else. It's 180 degrees the other way. Young people today view entrepreneurship as less risky than working in corporate America or working for someone else. Wow. They view it as the thing they can ultimately control. And when we do the math on that in our heads and recognize that what they need is different and more involved than simple academic knowledge, which is critically important, but they also have to have these technical abilities and professional skills, because where they see themselves is doing something entrepreneurial. And you can do it today in America. You can have a side hustle. You can have 2 or 3 things that you do. You can work for 2 or 3 organizations. There's lots of ways to be successful in America, and we have to recognize young people are ferreting them out every day.
That's a huge number. Yeah, that's
it's a game-changing number.
Yeah, it really
to
is.
Our skills gap and to our workforce development and economic development around the country, and I deal with that, is that we have to adapt. I talk to businesses today about, entrepreneurship is owning your own business, but intrapreneurship is carving out the ability for someone to have an entrepreneurial opportunity within your business model. So intrapreneurship becomes something that is going to gain traction moving forward.
Okay, interesting. I also like the point you made about students and even adults being okay with failing, seeing that, and where I'm going with that is when we look at social media, everybody sees everybody's best. Their perfect day, their perfect vacation, their perfect meal, their perfect. And so I think sometimes, especially the younger generation struggle with, that's not my life. And well, that's not really their life either. And, it's hard for them to understand that and to see. So I think it is so important, like you said, for them to see that we all have struggles and the failures that we had, and that it's okay and that you can overcome them and, survive them and even, excel after them. I think that's an important point that you made.
And it's important. They have to learn how to connect too. They need to be modeled a human connection. I always say there's 3 questions that every young person has to have the answer to. The answer has to be yes to all of them. And it's simply, do you see me? Do you hear me? Do I matter? Our staff feel the same way. We all feel the same way. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's unconscious. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do I matter? If the answer to one of those questions is no, you've lost the younger person in your sphere of influence. And that could be in your home, classroom, or place of business. You've lost them. You may never get them back again. But when you recognize, and when I speak to young people and I share that simple knowledge of, do you see me? Do you hear me? Because we all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to know we matter. And I tell young people all the time, the power in building your personal competitive advantage is recognizing whoever you're engaging with has to say yes to those same 3 questions dealing with you. And it's an aha moment to some young people that, oh, it's important what the other person also thinks. And they understand that their personal competitive advantage is the ability to build that human connection from their perspective as well. It's not one way. It's actually bidirectional. So being able to get these kinds of key points to students, and making sure that they can now leverage that in order to build something meaningful in their life, regardless of their grade point average, regardless of what they're good at, but they can take these and build something remarkable in their life.
So I have recently read some research about the younger generations, particularly millennials and Gen Z, that the importance of transparency for them, especially in, their consumer practices, employee engagement. How do you think that schools can implement that for the younger generations, for both teachers and the students?
Genuine and authentic is where it's at. I mean, that's just that simple. I mean, transparency comes from being genuine and authentic, telling it like it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't overblow it. You don't need a lot of hyperbole to try to get them to move forward. Just letting them know how this is, whatever it is, how this is relevant and how they will use it. The questions they need an answer to are, why is this important and how will I use this moving forward? Yeah. And when I talk and do professional development for teachers at any level of education, regardless of what they teach, I ask all of them a very simple question they need to answer about their subject matter expertise area is, why would anyone learn what you teach? Why would anyone do it? If the knee-jerk reaction is, I don't have a good answer to that question, then you're asking the people in your sphere of influence to come up with their own answer, and you may not like the one they come up with. If you cannot answer that question, why is this important to the learner? And it can't be because it's a prerequisite. They have to know this. That's not a good answer. It can't be because they get a certification if it's a career and technical education program, because the certification in and of itself is just a piece of paper. It's, what does the certification buy them? How will they be able to use this in their lifestyle, no matter how grand, modest, or laid back they view their life? And Generation Z, this may be an aha, it is when I travel the nation, but when I talk to young people and I talk to leaders and teachers, I give them the first 45 seconds of my speeches to, seniors and high school kids and middle school kids. And at the end of it, I say each of them have to build a personal competitive advantage to achieve whatever lifestyle they see down the road, right? No matter how grand, modest, or laid back they view their life down the road, because lifestyle is everything. Careers become a lifestyle decision. But here's the power in this knowledge. We tend to talk about all too young people as if they all could have or should have grand plans, right? You can make this kind of money, you could do this kind of thing, you could do something really exceptional. And whereas that can be true, most young people in Gen Z have modest and laid back views of their life in the future. And when we talk grand plans, we lose those who have modest and laid back plans in their mind. And you can change daily, right? I mean, they may start off with grand plans on Monday, modest by Wednesday, and by Friday, they're pretty laid back lifestyles, right? But to be completely relevant, you have to recognize their lifestyles hit all 3 and at different times in their life. So to be relevant, every piece of learning has to have purpose associated with building a personal competitive advantage in their life to accomplish whichever lifestyle they view for themselves. It's an extraordinary shift in perspective that doesn't change what we teach, but it does change how we frame it.
Wow. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the framing, the delivery, and
it's all about how you bring it relevant.
Yep. Absolutely.
I say this all the time. Education's very siloed. 4-year universities think they're the coolest, sexiest piece of education in America. Community and technical colleges think they're the coolest, sexiest piece of education in America. At the PK-12 level, academic teachers think they're the coolest, sexiest piece of education in America. Career and technical education teachers think they're the coolest, sexiest piece of education in America. And the truth, hands down, is that they're all the coolest, sexiest piece of education in America. They're all great. They're all wonderful. They're all relevant. But we have to connect the dots so that each learner is getting what they need to do ultimately what they want to accomplish. And we have to bring that to life.
Do you, as you said that, it sparked a thought about leadership. Is that something that leaders forget sometimes too? That we have one expectation for everyone that we lead when they all have different motivations and needs and desires, you know, and we can use like, I guess, a sports analogy, not everyone on the Bulls was Michael Jordan. So, but if that's your expectation that they all are going to be him, the rest of them are probably not going to be their best, or, they're going to burn out one. How does that, as a leader, how do you think that is, how do they make that
Well,
adjustment? Or
Brad, I'm totally with you. We tend to think as leaders, and I'm a leader of my own company. I've got, a number of people that support what I do across North America. So I have to lead an organization of people as well. And, you can set the vision and you can set the culture and you can, create this shared vision you're trying to get to, any of us, whatever we're leading as leaders, but to recognize that everybody shows up each day with a different view of their role in that. Taking your analogy, I would tell you that no one else on the Bulls was Michael Jordan, but I will tell you that his supporting cast made Michael Jordan better. What he had was able to use his talents in a way that in his supporting cast, Scottie Pippen, BJ Armstrong, all of these guys that really kicked in, and I don't know all the Bulls players at that time, but they all, he was the kind of leader on the court that allowed people to also be their best, and that supporting cast obviously three-peated and went on to such a great legacy. So in our leadership ability, we have to be able to connect the dots to the vision, but we have to recognize that there has to be alignment, meaning people have to buy into your leadership ability. You have to win hearts and minds, and that hearts and minds is critically important in the relationship and human connection piece of building, what you're doing, but also then leading and being consistent in the way you empower those around you to do something extraordinary.
So, can you tell us about a teacher or other educator that had the biggest impact on you?
Oh wow, there were a number of them.
Mm,
I had a lot of people, and sometimes it's hard. I do get asked that question occasionally, Jeremy, and it's a tough
mhm,
question to answer because I really think I am the culmination of a lot of people's impact on me. It's usually the people who built the biggest relationship with me. Sometimes when I speak around the nation, I talk about, obviously, being in the bottom half of my class in high school, but the teachers that I remember the most were not the teachers who were easy. You would think for a student who wasn't, who was looking for the easy way out, like a lot of students are today. I can't even get a picture in my head of the people who were easy. Who I remember were the ones who were tough on me, and held me to a higher standard and pushed me further and faster. But I knew they loved me. I knew that they would climb a mountain with me.
mm,
And to me, that's part of the human connection. It's the love of what they did and how they tried to impact me. And I tell people all the time, sometimes when I talk about the generational information and where young people are today, what they think, what makes them tick, how they make decisions, we come to the conclusion, some people incorrectly, that, wow, it sounds like we have to kiss young people's butts. I'm like, no, no, no. On the contrary, if you can build a human connection, you can leverage the human connection to push them further and faster. You can be tough on them, but you can be tough on them from the right perspective. See, in America today, if you're hard on a young person in your sphere of influence and you do not have a human connection with them, there's a word for that. The word is jerk. You're a jerk. But if you have a human connection and you have the ability to leverage that human connection, you can hold them to higher expectations, you can push them further and faster, and you can expect more of them through the right framing, right, Jeremy? Back to framing,
mhm.
gives you the ability then to push them further and faster, and that's what plays out in real time with young people today.
that's some of the pushback I get because I'm all about relationship. That's the centerpiece. And people think that's just warm and fuzzy and trying to be their best friend. And I'm like, no, I'm like, my relationships before rigor. And they're like, well, we need rigor. And I don't necessarily like that word, but, when we think about work ethic, stick to itiveness and things like that. But I'm like, if you don't have that, just like you just mentioned, if you don't have that relationship with them, you'll never get them to reach that level you want. You can have high expectations all you want, but if they don't know you care about them and want the best for them, you can't get their best. But when they feel that, when they know you truly, just like you said, some of your toughest teachers, you knew they cared about you, that they would climb that mountain with you. You want to give them your best, kind of like a child at home, when they know their parents care about them and love them and things, they want to please them. They want to, do more for them. And I think it's that way with students. It's not that the relationship is the end all. It's just it's the basis on which you build to get the best out of them. And like you said, without that, to have that, we want the rigor, we want, these high expectations. Yeah, they think jerk. That's what they see. That's how they feel. So it's so important. And the same thing with leadership, I think, too. And like you said earlier, I think that's where a lot of times leaders have difficulty is with the communication and the empathy. Seeing the people that they lead as people before they're professional. And, that has to be how you view them and understand them, especially in education. One of the things me and Jeremy talk about is, education is what's called a high agreeableness profession, which means that people that tend to go into it are high agreeable, meaning they're kind, they're empathetic, they're affirmational. And most teachers are that way, and so, but they have to be kind of led that way too, because that's how they're wired. That's how, their personality is. And so I think, leaders really that struggle with that have a hard time leading their staff too. So that, like you said, the communication and empathy, if you can get those two grounded, then you build that trust with them to get the best from them. So I really like that.
Well, human connection starts with leadership to the staff, then the staff to the students.
Mm-hmm.
And that relationship has to kind of flow downstream, if you will. And you just have to recognize where the world has shifted. And, I call it the educational ecosystem. And when I speak around the nation, I show this pie chart. It's very simple, but the ecosystem exists between administrators, teachers, counselors, special needs, paraprofessionals, classified staff, and then students. And I say, here's where the world has shifted. Everybody in this ecosystem is burned out. Everybody's exhausted. Everybody's doing everything they can, and as part of the challenge is that from the federal level and the state level, sometimes even from the organizational level, we've dumped so much stuff onto the heads of our teachers or administrators or counselors or paraprofessionals, special needs folks, et cetera, that they no longer have the bandwidth to deliver what is the one non-negotiable for young people in America today, and it's the human connection. Because the thing we've given up is the ability and bandwidth to build the relationship. And we're wondering now why kids are feral across America. They're feral at elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. Their behavior's at an all-time high. Depression is at an all-time high. We're looking at all of these things. It's because the human connection has been sacrificed to micromanage our teachers from doing what they do as their resting pulse, which is to build a human connection and then leverage that human connection to teach them something and allow them to build the relevance and purpose. And so I'm on a stump around the nation that we've got to pull things off the plates of our administrators as well, right? Administrators, teachers, counselors, we've got to free them up to do what they do best so that they can get back to the zone of building relationships, which the pandemic absolutely decimated.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point. A lot of times we think about the teachers, but it's everyone. It's the paras, it's, the staff, the administrators. You're so right. And it's hard to do those connections if you're just absolutely burnt out and, your plate's so full you can't come up for air. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. And you speak about that all the time, Brad, and kudos. And I applaud it every time I see it is that, understanding that we've got to make it easier on our educators. And that means, at all, right? All of them, we've got to make it easier on them. We can't make it harder. And nobody's happy across the nation and in all the state testing and everything. No one's up front going, hey, our state testing is fantastic. Look at us. Nobody, even the state who probably would be number one, doesn't go like, no, put your hand down. We're number one of a group of people that aren't getting it done. And nobody wants to take credit for that. But it's like, but amongst all of this that's going on in the nation, we need to get things off the plates of our educators and let them focus on building relationships and then leveraging that relationship to teach the curriculum of whatever their subject matter expertise area is.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Okay, so educators are notoriously bad at taking care of themselves. So we're looking for advice. How do you do it? Yeah, how do you decompress?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is build a relationship and the empathy necessary to understand what they're going through, and then do everything you can to take even the smallest thing off their plate. How do you make their job easier? How do you streamline? How do you prioritize? How much of what we do is really necessary, and how much of it is just because it would be nice? I think every leader in every organization, education or outside of education, has to do that in real time all the time. I do that with my team. How do I make things easier? How do we streamline? How do we update? How do we best use technology? How do I ask for less things because it'd be just nice to have? Some leaders believe in, I want the following reports. I need them in the following days. I need like, how much of that's really necessary? Some of it may be very necessary, but is all of it necessary? Is there a way to take some things off so that people can go and they can take a breath and they can say, all right, someone's being genuine, authentic, transparent, and saying, here's what I really want to spend our time on. And I see leaders around the country doing that, and their teams will move heaven and earth for them. I see other people who are completely disconnected with what's happening in the classroom at the tactical level, and we're just expecting teachers to continue to show up. And one of the tipping points we're reaching in America is, many parts of America, we're finding it hard to find teachers, to find administrators, to find mental health professionals, paraprofessionals, et cetera. And so what's happening is, I use this example around the nation, is we may have 1,400 kids in a high school. I'm making these numbers right. We may have 1,400 kids in a high school and 105 people that support those 1,400 kids. But the next year comes along, there's a couple of retirements, a couple of people left. We couldn't find enough people. Now we've got 100 people. I've written Forbes articles about this. We now got 100 people supporting the same 1,400 kids. There aren't less kids. There's just less people to support them. Well, the next year rolls around, and now we're down to 96 people supporting the 1,400. And what's happening is we're killing the survivors. We're killing the people who stayed. We're killing the people who are still doing their level best every day. And that's when we have to start recognizing that if we do not stop this trend and start refiguring how we do this, what's going to happen is one day we're going to have the big drop where enough of the people who really stayed just say goodbye. And we have to be very cautious of that. Teachers, educators, administrators, everybody's doing an extraordinary job with what they have. We just have to recognize the world's changed.
Yeah, and I think that's so ironic, but you're so right. Take that example you had of the school. So the ones that stay may have had 25 students. The next year they have 30 because they can't get people. And so how do we reward them the next year? Well, now you have 35 students or 40 students. And then we wonder why they quit, why they leave, and why no one's wanting to come in. The data is, when you look at like colleges of education and the enrollments in them, they are at all-time lows. And there's really not enough students in them now to fulfill the people that are leaving and retiring. And so, like you said, everybody's kind of on the brink of burnout anyway. But all we're doing is just adding more and more, it's the 20 to the 25 students to the 30 students the next year. And, like you said, at some point, enough people are going to be like, I'm done. And then what do we do?
That tipping point is here. It's real. Some areas are better than others, but systemically around the nation, it's the tipping point we're reaching. And then that has its tentacles into our communities, into employment, into economic development and viability of our communities. There are a lot of small rural communities. I spend a lot of time in rural America, which are some of my favorite places to go. but they are struggling and they're doing everything they can to try to, kind of keep their fingers in the dike, so to speak, just to keep the dam from breaking. But we're quickly reaching this point, and so we've got to be able to connect all these dots. And which is, I love to speak around the nation and and give the strategies and the actions that are necessary to pull all of this off. And you're doing the same thing, Brad. So it's how do we connect these dots, and how do we get a community walking in lockstep? I was just in Ponca City, Oklahoma, speaking. I was brought in by economic development, but I had superintendents there. I had community college. I had the university there, as well as employers, and trying to connect the dots between education, employment, economic development, and so that the pipelines are solid between all of this at all levels of education experience, so that we're sending young people off to get what they need to do the kinds of things they want to do in their life. And they may make multiple decisions. Someone may decide out of high school to go do, something with a certification, but 2 years down the line, they go, hey, I'd really like to take this to another level and become an engineer in this kind of field. Now they're going to a 4-year university with purpose. They're investing wisely and they're getting it done. Now they're a completer, as opposed to going just to kind of figure life out at the most expensive time in their life. So it's building, where do they go and how do they get there? And how do they make the best decisions for them? I can give you lots of examples of those kinds of things that are going on around the nation. And kids are becoming really good educational purchasers because they're not going to take the debt and not know what they're getting out of it. It's too expensive anymore.
Yeah. I was just about to say, it's too expensive anymore. Absolutely. Wow. Well, that was some good information. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And man, you have a really good message, and it's a very relevant message too. Probably now more than at any other time in the last 50 or 60 years. And like you said, coming out of COVID, it just accentuates all of that. It really put like a spotlight on these issues, and going forward, we have to make some changes.
Well, thank you, Brad. It's an honor to be here and share all this. It's great to chat with you and Jeremy, and just kind of unpack kind of some of the places where we are, and and how do we start adapting accordingly. My team and I are launching at the end of this week. By the time this podcast becomes available, it'll be, but we're coming out with something called the Competitive Advantage Track that we're putting on YouTube for free. It's going to be for parents, for educators, for anyone that wants to help young people know how do they build a competitive advantage and how do they leverage that to do whatever they want in their life. We've got the first 6 episodes up. They're 5 to 8 minutes each, but it comes complete with curriculum that teachers, parents, anyone with a young person in their sphere of influence, it comes with reflective questions and discussion guides and all kinds of stuff so that they can watch the video. And I'll talk about the power of failure in one of them. I'll talk about how to be comfortable being uncomfortable in another one, how to, build a human connection in a third, how to, build a competitive advantage. What does it take and how do you do it? How do you deal with failure? And so it's these critical things that are necessary, but it's me on screen talking to kids, sitting at a counter and just talking candid, frank, and authentic as to, it's not teleprompted. It's me talking from my heart about these topics. And then a follow-up conversation can happen with young people in middle school, high school, college age, and beyond. But it's trying to get information in the hands of kids so that they understand what it takes to be, successful. How can they achieve the things they want? How to build their dream, as opposed to building other people's dreams when they're doing other things, right? How do they carve out time to build their own dream? So what does that take? So we're excited about that.
It's almost like you're sitting in a cafe chatting with them.
Yeah, exactly. We tested it with a lot of middle school kids and high school kids, and they loved them because, their response back was, man, he was being really, I mean, I talk about my failures. I talk about, all of this and kind of where the world has shifted. And I find the more candid and frank I am and transparent with young people, the more, the more they want it. And when I speak, frankly, I love to build the connection and relevance and purpose to someone's own personal competitive advantage, because that's how they will move through their life. I don't talk about what they should do. I talk about, why they need to build this, and now they need to do it based on their own unique interests, talents, and abilities, and kind of connect the dots. And one of the questions I get most from high school juniors and seniors when I present to them, one of the questions I get all the time and it's the one that comes up the most when I say it's the one they ask most frequently is, what do you think of a gap year? And I tell young people very candidly and frankly, I go, look, man, if you think you need a 12 or 13 month vacation because of all the hard work you put into high school, I'm here to tell you, do not do it. A body in motion remains in motion. And if you stop your journey, you will find it next to impossible to get rolling again. Don't do it. It's not the time in your life to take the vacation. But if you want to take 12 to 14 months to work 14 hours a day, 2 jobs, a couple side hustles, do some job shadowing, do an internship, do an apprenticeship, do something where you can kind of see what you really like, what you're good at, and then determine what the next best course of action is. 4-year degree, 2-year degree, certifications, licensures, apprenticeship, military, entrepreneurship. Finding what that next thing is, then go, go, go. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you need to be able to, but put everything you've got into it. If you put everything you've got into it, it'll be time well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And I'm so with you on that mindset. Like, and I even tell my nephews and stuff, when you're young, push yourself to the limit. Because when you get 40 and 50 and 60, that's when you kind of have to slow down. But yeah, when you're young and have the energy and the time, see what your limits are, push them. Do all you can, accomplish all that you can so that you set yourself up, where that you find what you want and will be most effective. But yeah, I'm like you, to take time off at that age, that's a waste. It's a waste. Absolutely. All right. So this is Lattes and Leaders. So what is your hot beverage of choice? Is it coffee, latte, cappuccino, hot tea, or none of the above?
My favorite thing, and it's going to sound so cheesy, but it's a nice glass of ice water. I'm not a drinker. I don't drink coffee. Can you imagine me on caffeine? I mean, let's be serious.
Yeah, the caffeine.
Let's be serious. Can you imagine me chugging a big Mountain Dew prior to this? I mean, that could be scary. So I love ice water. I love vitamin waters, something nice and flavorful, but that's about it. I know it's not cool and it's not, out there, but the candid, frank version of that answer is that.
Wow. Well, that'll do. We'll let that be acceptable.
I've never had a latte, but I love my latte time with my buddies, Brad and Jeremy. So.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we've had a great time chatting with you this morning, and I just love your message. You have a lot of great things to talk about and a lot of things that, we need to, kind of just integrate into our actions and into our schools. So thank you again for chatting with us this morning, and we hope to have you back very soon.
I'd love to come back. It's been an absolute honor to be with you. I wish you both all the best in your journey and in your message that you're delivering, which is outstanding. So would love to come back. I look forward to that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for carving time out for us today. I appreciate it so much.
Glad I could do it. Thank you.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.